There we go. We may as well record this way I can stick it on my website for anybody who wants to find out what you're about, what's going on in your life.
Content is king, they say,
Well,
right?
there you go. I mean, that's why we do this, right? It's funny, when I first started doing this, I didn't know how the hell to record. I've never dealt with all of this.
Of course, yeah.
My computer skills suck to begin with. And so this just added one more element of like, do I really need this? And the answer was, yeah, you really do. You better figure out how to record.
Yeah. And we all had to learn these platforms pretty quick.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And this is definitely not my favorite thing on earth, but nevertheless, it's something that just have to deal with, I guess.
Yeah, it's part of it. We most of our meetings we did using the Google Meet platform, which is the same, only the buttons are always in a different place, and
Yeah.
everybody's using a different format, and so always finding the record or where the camera is or where the microphones are, and
They drove me crazy. That's why I gave up. I mean, I have the whole thing set up in my basement with the microphones and all. Half the time I didn't know if it was working or not, so I just moved upstairs to my computer where I know I'm recording and that it's picking up my sound.
it seems like we were one of the dumb people, not dumb, we just happened to upgrade all of our Apple equipment like 30 days before the world shut down. So we had invested, I don't know, $15,000 on new iBooks and iPhones and iPads and the whole deal. In hindsight, I'm glad we did, because all of that stuff worked really well as far as not needing microphones, not needing headphones.
Yeah.
So we kind of got lucky that way. I wasn't happy about trying to come up with how to pay for it when we couldn't turn any presses, but
yeah. Yeah, it was interesting when this whole thing first started. I mean, everybody's kind of jumping on GoToMeeting to begin with, because that was the one, that was a format that I was always involved with, not on my own, but everybody that I dealt with, from SGIA on down, used GoToMeeting. And then, of course, Zoom came in, and I guess you can do a bunch of stuff on Facebook or whatever. I've never even gotten into all of that stuff. It's just over my head, I'm afraid.
There are a bunch of them.
There are some things that I'm really good at. That's not one of them. I'm not sure what the other things are that I am good at, but that's definitely not one of them.
There's plenty. I just, I guess, learning new tricks as an old dog it takes a little.
No, you're not that older dog. You're not that older dog, although you are getting some gray finally.
Yeah. No, it's just learning to do things a little bit differently. And it's this. What do we always say, that the only consistent thing is change? I mean, it's sort of the way it goes. I don't think any of us anticipated a worldwide pandemic that basically shut us down for X number of months. And I think even as weird or difficult as 2020 was, I think I don't think I've worked as hard as I've worked ever in 2021.
What's interesting with pandemic is I think it actually did some very good things.
Sure.
Kind of got those who really didn't want to work out of the way, and those who really were interested in working, doing what they were supposed to do, which was work. And I think for a lot of companies, certainly the bottom line improved dramatically, because even though the top line didn't do anything wonderful, the bottom line did, because they got rid of a lot of dead weight, people who just weren't really performing. The biggest challenge now, obviously, and I don't know if you're hitting into it, but trying to find employees.
Yeah.
It's absurd. Every time I see a guy on the corner hustling with his cardboard sign, it's like, get a goddamn job, man. They're dying for people, and you're standing here trying to hustle nickels and dimes, really?
I carry applications with me so I can hand them to those guys.
Yeah, that would be the way to go. Here, fill this out. Let me give you a pen as well.
It's it's just a different kind of worry, I suppose. But I'll take what we're dealing with now over so much unknown in early 2020, or I guess second quarter 2020. Just figuring out how to overcome government shutdowns and customers stop paying and customers stop ordering. And we were pretty blessed, and we had some things happen that held us together. My sister and brother-in-law are in infrastructure construction, like bridges and water treatment, and Kiewit is one of the companies they work with, Brown Caldwell, another company, multi-billion-dollar companies. And I was on a Zoom call with my sister. No, she was on a call with her employers and had one of our masks on, and one of our elephant masks on, and one of their CEOs or CFOs or something went, "Hey, where'd you get that?" So we did tens of thousands of masks that held us together for probably a few months until people started going, okay, we're going to figure out how to do these events again. So much like most folks that held it together, we sort of got lucky and blessed at the same time, and we're able to, and today you can't give them away. I've got shelves full of masks that I can't sell, but they were, we were paying $7 and $8 and reselling them for $8 or $10, $11 embellished. And we tried to take that approach because we've got no value if we don't decorate them. So the idea was you can brand and still get that. Anyway, we sort of got lucky and blessed all at the same time getting through that.
So now you got to figure out how to get rid of the masks that are on the shelves, huh?
Yeah, I want to put them in the dumpster. I really do. But I also know things are so fragile right now.
I think, like I said, the East Coast seems to have started a mask mandate again in some of the states, just because of the outbreak. Will it come towards us? The way this whole thing has been going, it will head in this direction again. And it just comes down to how smart you're going to be with where you are, and whether or not any of the governors or whatever push in mask mandates again. Do I think they will? I do. I think if things start to get out of hand, it would be smarter to put it in than to just let it ride. But I don't make those decisions.
Sure. The bigger cities, probably. We are in rural Colorado, and it's sort of, it's been a thing, but it certainly has been, we have a Walmart, we have a post office, but for the most part, that piece of it hasn't been difficult to get through. Comparatively. Now, I don't own a restaurant. I don't, I think the food industry, the restaurants were the ones that really got smacked, and continue. I know that there's still a lot of indoor stuff in LA County. And you and I both were in Long Beach, and some of these guys that are on were in Long Beach. There's still so many places that are closed, and either chose not to come back or just could not get back. And some fairly sizable chains. That Rock Bottom is still closed, and I'm sure that they're owned by a pretty big operation. So the fact that they just decided not to reopen is interesting. And then some of the smaller places all along Pine there are still closed.
Yeah, and Rock Bottom was a Colorado company.
That's right. Started in downtown.
Yeah.
So now they hit rock bottom.
They what?
Did they hit rock bottom now.
Yeah,
That's exactly right.
pretty much. Although I'm sure that you're right. I'm sure they were bought out by someone. I'm sure it isn't the original group that owns them. I don't know if they opened it in Colorado, because they did have one out at Park Meadows.
Sure.
And I don't know if that's open or not.
I haven't been we're, again, being in rural Colorado, it's not our thing, and having to travel, you get to eat out or have to eat out. So
Yeah.
we don't eat out all that much. And because where we're located, everything's an hour away, unless, I mean, we have a couple of local places that are just that local, Elizabeth Farm.
Yeah.
Match type of burger and beer kind of places. So we just don't, so I wouldn't know what's open or not in Colorado these days in Denver area.
You know, I mean, the one thing during the pandemic, we didn't go out at all. And so even now we do go out periodically, but it's not nearly as much as we used to do prior to the pandemic. We just got away from dropping everything and just grabbing a bite somewhere. Instead, we're doing more at home. Of course,
Sure.
Learned how to make pizza, learned how to bake bread, you know, did things that normally we wouldn't have done just because we were confined to the house anyway. So that being the case, may as well do some playing around and trying out some things that were
Sure.
not necessarily what we were accustomed to doing, but it actually turned out to be kind of fun.
Absolutely.
You know, making my own pizza, I'm all over that, man. I love doing that stuff. You know,
Well, and there's your conservative approach to the spend for a period of time, I think is for us is kind of rolled over, being very careful, whether it's personal things like, you know, morning Starbucks every day.
Yeah.
We went a year and a half, 2 years without a Starbucks, and now we might do it once or twice a month. So you kind of sort of transition into this someplace in between where the spend for all the conveniences or all the wants was there pre-pandemic, and now it's like, yeah, you know, let's just go home, make another pot. We don't need to.
I totally understand. I live on my Keurig now.
Exactly.
Richard, you joined us.
I've been here for a while.
I saw that. We just haven't gotten over to saying hi. Same thing with Ghosta. How are you?
I'm good.
Yep, same here.
Wonderful. Saw your dogs on Facebook. Nice going there.
Yep.
So, Lon, while we have you on, give me a rundown on your shop. You know, I've never been out to your place, even though we're both in Colorado. You're right. You're out in the countryside. I'm not.
I was thinking that when you asked me to join, I thought back and I went, Charlie's never been out here. And we have been going at this location now for 15 years. It's probably different than most people would think or know. When we got out of the when Graphic Elements sank, the screen print piece of that, the decoration piece of that was still profitable, but his 55 resort retail stores took the whole thing down. We tried to rebuild what was good in that, and Jason has joined us, and Jason's my right-hand man and partner in Graphic Elephants, and kind of rebuild with the things that were still good. We tried to keep several of our I call them family accounts, people that we've done business with for 25, 30 years, employees the same way. Jason and I have been together for over 25 years. Our art director, Corey, 20 some years. Ken was with us 20 some years. We have a lot of really almost family type of people with us. We've just brought on a couple of younger guys that are kind of getting the you know, it's different in that it's in a build. We built a building on our property, so it's we have 5 acres out in the sticks, and we built the building right after we built the house. It's sort of our dream home with an ultimate shop. So if we ever sell, somebody's got a great place to work on cars or RVs or whatever, because we've got 600 amps into the building. set up a fully automated operation so that we could manage it with less people. Everything from passports to full automation, screen making, automatic hooping, a lot of different automation that we don't have to put a body on those pieces, and then try to really cater to what we call customers that are willing to pay a little bit more for value. So we still specialize in kind of the specialty. Jason's working on a print right now for Starfest, which is a Star Wars convention thing here in Colorado that Corey did the illustration for and the SEPs for, and it's 11 screens and 18 inches tall. So one of those crazy difficult, and that's what we're sort of known for, which I like, but we still work an awful lot for the Western brands and some of the folks that we've worked for years and years and years. But it's more of a family relationship and a partnership with our customers. And they've been patient with us. We've been patient with them, and through all of these things, we talk about it on our catalyst calls with Mark and Richard, how hard it is to find product, how hard it is to get your raw materials, how hard it is to get people. So your customers have to be patient, and so far our customers are giving us the slack it takes to get through what we need to get through. So a little bit different approach, but it's the ultimate 80-20 rule, and we were really forced into it with COVID, that we really try to put 80% of our efforts into 20% of our top tier customers, kind of thing.
Nice. One of these days I will get out to your place.
You're welcome. And in fact, we've had as you may or may not know, I'm sure you know, Charlie, but as the audience may or may not know, we work with a lot of the manufacturers on benchmarking and beta and alpha testing, and we do work at their factories, but also in our place. And we've had some pretty significant players in the business come out to our place, and we do the work in the building, and then we'll have them on the deck for a glass of wine and a burger or a steak. And that's sort of how we entertain, because we just don't have the restaurants, and you got a bit of a drive to Parker to get to a hotel, but we've even had folks stay at the house. We've got a guest room in the basement, and sometimes it's, especially when you get tight in this business, you become pretty close, and when people visit, it's easier just to have them stay, and then you can have one more glass of wine. So it's a little bit different kind of approach. Again, we've had the higher ups at Avient and M&R and Dow Corning, and on and on and on. So we're able to focus on their needs at the moment, and then we can kind of entertain and create that family vibe and grill something, and it's we have a view off our deck of Pikes Peak. So when you get a chance, we'll have to do it later in the day, and you can stay for dinner, and we'll have a couple glasses of wine.
I can bring plenty of wine. I just relocated my wine refrigerator. So about 10 years ago, I bought a big wine refrigerator. It sat in my garage for 10 years in the crate. Never even saw it, because I was going to take it down to my basement, but it holds 166 bottles of wine. It's rather large. And so I didn't have anyone who could help me get it to the basement or even into the house. Finally cleared out a back room on the other side of our laundry room, and had to have some old washing machine and dryer removed. And I said, okay, I want those removed, but I want this refrigerator moved into that space, which they did do. So I've now stocked it, and doing those things, I went through all the wines that I have. I'm sitting with 350 bottles of wine right now.
Lord.
What's amazing is how much they've gone up in price or in value. I mean, I'm blown away. I've got one bottle that's $3,600.
Oh,
and it's like, I know I didn't pay much more than 100, 150 bucks for it. And even there, I have no idea how I ended up with it. But I mean, I've got probably $40,000 worth of wine sitting in my basement.
Wow. Do
which,
you, does it,
so to bring out a bottle and drink would be no issue whatsoever.
I want the $3,600 bottle.
Oh, you know, I got to figure out, when do you pop the cork on one of those? I mean, I've got three others that are about $1,000 each. That again, I don't know how I ended up with those, but you know, wine is just one of those funny things. The value, I bought an 80,
Just listen.
back in 1994, I bought a bottle of Lafitte Rothschild, which was a bad year. Paid $85 for it. It's now going for $1,050. And it was, and I bought three of them. I sent one up to Steve Lutz. I don't know if you remember him.
I remember, Steve.
Steve
Well, he's the one who
Lutz.
got me started on wines. And then, so I popped the cork on one of them a number of years ago. It was horrible. So I called him up. I said, Steve, this thing is miserable. He said, oh, yeah, it takes a lot of time to breathe. You have to kind of decide at breakfast if you're going to have it for dinner, so that you can pop it, pop the cork and let it breathe during the entire day.
Oh,
And
my.
it's like, really? Anyway, but no, I'd love to come out one of these times. I just, now that the weather is getting nice and I don't have to worry about getting stuck in snow,
That's
coming
true.
out to visit wouldn't be a bad thing.
We-
During the
we
winter,
get all the snow.
I'll pass. My
Yeah, when the
car
city
doesn't-
gets 6 inches, we usually get 14 to 18. We're a little bit elevated. We're at 7,500 feet, so we get a little bit more snow out here than the city does.
Yeah, well, this year we hardly got anything actually. So,
Oh, it's so dry.
you know, I mean, yeah. Matter of fact, I called up, Susie called up our lawn guy and said, hey, what's the deal, man? Our lawn is horrible. He said, you know, between the wind and the dryness, we don't know ourselves what the hell's going on.
We got
So,
one part of ours that's got southern exposure too, that is just so brown. It's hardly, it's trying to green up, you can tell, but it may be rough this year. Or you can spend $1,500 a month trying to water it and it still doesn't green up right.
yeah, or you can buy a bunch of green paint and have a permanent color there. So let's go back. So back in your day, you moved to Denver to work for OP.
I did, yes.
I remember you coming
I
there.
remember you.
So I still had Bullseye then, and you were
Yep.
working with OP. So you worked with OP. You didn't work with the children's wear division. You worked with the other division.
Images, they called it, the children's wear, and I mean, you remember it was a bit convoluted and
Yeah,
a lot of a lot of things were happening in multiple buildings, and it was probably one like when school was over, I had a math major and a art major, and you know, Dad said get a job.
that's
So,
pretty strange
yeah.
combination to begin with, but nevertheless.
You know, in hindsight, I would say it's a perfect fit for screen printing, in that I always think that the balance of art and math and science are the kind of the keys to being a really good printer. If you can embrace the voodoo, embrace the art, never, you know, kick it completely aside, but control everything that you can control. If you can balance those things together, to me, that's how you really get to that next level kind of thing. And for sure, before we had a lot of the tools we have today, it was the only way that you could, you know, get outstanding, not only great prints, but at a speed that's profitable. And,
Right.
you know, if you look back at a lot of the things you taught and Mark and Richard taught in those days were things that I embraced, and still do, of course, and that contributed a lot to our success. But getting a job, and basically I had a reclaim job in Lincoln, and then because it was screen print, I thought, oh, that sounds creative. And then a buddy of mine said, hey, I'll get you an interview in, actually the production manager at that time, you may remember him, David Corus. He
I know, I
was,
remember David, of course, he moved down to Arizona.
so he was the production manager at OP before Tim Ritchie, Tim something. Anyway, he moved to Lincoln and hired me. That's where I went to school. He hired me. I was reclaiming for a few months, and then within that time, I was running the screen department with no idea what I was doing. I was 21 years old. And he said, if you really want to make it in this business, I can get you an interview at OP. And you'll learn everything you need to know at OP, and then you can write your, much like today, we talk to our young guys that we hire, you know, you learn this business, you learn how to make screens, you learn how to operate an automatic, you'll always have a job. There are people hiring continually. Big, small, any town, any state, anywhere, any country for that matter, you can get a job. And so I took his advice and moved to Denver with everything fit into this teeny little pickup truck that my dad didn't want to co-sign on, but ultimately did. And then
He wanted to get you out of the house somehow.
kind of one of those things, yeah. And then within a very short time, I think about a year, they hired me as ink boy. I called it on my resume ink department manager, but I believe it was ink boy. And within a year, I was the production manager at OP with tons of help from you, Charlie. You would come in and we were using wood frames and gluing them back together and no idea what we're doing. And I learned how to manage well before I ever learned how to print. And that, I suppose it served me well in the grand scheme of things. But it was, troubleshooting those precisions at the time, and one of the very early M&R challengers, and a staff that was nothing but Mexican women, and they loved me, but they messed with me. My entire time there, they loved to mess with me. They would bring particularly hot food just to mess with me, and that it was great experience for me, and I wouldn't trade any of it. In the end, it got really messy and weird, and I'm sure you remember some of those things that happened.
I do.
Some people were let go, and we went under lie detector tests, and I think they were running some things out the back door, and I was too young and stupid to have any idea what was really happening, which probably saved my job.
The OP label certainly sold well. And if they could get it out the door without having to pay for it, they could pick up money.
Sure, I'm sure the same rules apply. I mean,
Oh, absolutely. Listen, t-shirt industry, all of us have, if we were owners, we've caught somebody trying to steal shirts.
oh yeah,
You
at every level, from a few pieces to thousands of pieces.
Yeah, it's just part of, it's an easy product to get rid of. But but I remember so from OP, you went over to Howie's place,
Yep, Golden Squeegee,
Golden Squeegee.
and him and Howie Emerson and Chuck DeLay had recently merged with Rocky Mountain High.
Yep.
And boy, you talk about opposites. I'm sure you remember calling on them. They were so different. And Chuck hired me kind of as his, maybe as a personal assistant kind of person. And back in those days, and it still kind of applies, if you have any history at OP, anybody in Denver will hire you. And it was kind of a lateral movement. I got fired from OP. They brought the son of the owners in to run the factory, and I spent a year teaching him everything I know, and then he didn't need me anymore and sent me down the road because I was still part of that weird.
It was a strange time with Tom, especially. Tom
Hill. It was very. It was weird, but again, I didn't know any better. And Howie and Chuck hired me basically on the spot. I came over and just shook hands, and they said, "How soon can you start?" So. And they were the next biggest in Denver at the time, and they.
Actually, I came out to Denver because Howie hired me
Oh, that's right. That's right.
When, what was the Fashion Design Group at that point, which lasted for, let's see, I got here in August and I was given my severance pay in December, and whoever was still on the books in February got hung for their salary. So, but I mean, I obviously knew Howie. When I came out, Howie's place had one automatic, and then Western Art, which became OP.
That's right. That's right.
Gary Hill had 2 old Precisions. So they were the biggest in town. I left New York and I left 4 Precisions behind. So it was kind of like, really, I'm coming out here to places that are less than half of what I had. But Howie's business was heavily in the mountains.
Yeah, he did. He had some partners in Beaver Creek or something, in some stores or something, didn't he?
Yeah, he had all kinds of connections up there. I mean, he was a local, his brother, Ian, Iron, had
That's right.
a lot going on, especially with the transfers and stuff. And then Chuck had the Harley was able to print Harley, and that was his big thing.
Yep, that was big. That was big.
It was.
I have an interesting story to go along with that. I love to tell stories. So they were doing 7 figures with the Harley shops in Denver. And it was mostly, they would get the Hollybeck 3D emblem fronts, and then they put the local Harley dealer on the back, and it was just a massive business. And they, there's money in bikes. So they could get, I mean, by definition it's contract work, but it was fat contract work. So Chuck and Howie divorced in also a peculiar, messy manner, as partnerships often end up.
Yeah.
But I kind of stepped into Chuck's role as a general manager of the production. Howie handled sales, Chuck handled production. So I kind of stepped into his role when he left, and we were still doing business with all the Harley dealers, and that was before they changed all the rules. But I got a phone call from the owner of Rocky Mountain Harley. Vinny was his name. Just like you'd expect, old school biker, tattoo up and down arms, long hair, wears black, rides a Harley, but worth plenty. Him and his wife owned Rocky Mountain Harley. I think they're split and doing different things now too. But he calls me and says, "Hey, Lon, what's going on?" And he's a good customer, easy to deal with for the most part. He says, "Hey, I was at the swap meet this weekend, and I noticed some of Rocky Mountain Harley misprints in some of the dollar bins or the $3 bins or whatever." And he's very calm. He says, "I know you're new to all this, and this isn't necessarily your fault, but if I find somebody wearing one of your misprints and it has my logo on it, I will bring you his ear." I said, "Vinny, I appreciate where you're coming from. I will make sure that none of your stuff ends up at the flea market." And he said it was just totally straight-faced and 100% just business transaction. "I'm just gonna let you know, this is how it's gonna be."
Hey, he's protecting this business. I understand that.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure if I want any ears in my
No, absolutely not.
on my desk, but nevertheless, I can understand that. Yeah, fun time. Interesting. Yeah, and Chuck took that distributorship, the Harley stuff with him for a little while. And then
He was trying
Harley,
to farm it out, yeah. Because it has
Harley then
relationships.
pulled everything off and brought it all in-house.
Yeah, and that was difficult on Golden Squeegee in the grand scheme of things. And then as Howie tried to sell out, or did sell out, I mean, we've all seen this over and over and over. It's difficult to transition without the people that built it.
Yeah.
the new owners have different goals and relationships, and it just kind of crumbled. But that's, you rescued me at that time, right when they were getting bought out. You brought me on
I
in a
did.
sales role, which I'm not very good at, if you recall.
Nor am I. You know, what I always told everyone was we were great at resolving their problems. We just didn't know how the hell to sell them anything.
Yeah.
And that was the legacy of Bullseye was, you know, if you had a problem, we knew how to resolve it. Other than the financial side, didn't know how to handle that at all.
Yeah.
To this
Yeah.
day, still not a good numbers person, and definitely, I don't think any of us were great salespeople. I think the only reason we sold was because we knew how to bail people out. And so,
Marlon was pretty good from a pure
well, he
salesman
was,
perspective.
yeah, you know, he was, I mean, he didn't do that much in sales. He was more, I'd probably call him more customer service than anything else.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. He's kind of a yes man. He didn't necessarily have tons of, he was good at troubleshooting too, but he'd
Yeah.
ask for the business. He was smart enough to say, okay, I fixed your problem. Now you need a bucket of ink.
Yes,
Which bucket of ink do you want?
yeah, which
Rest his
neither of
soul,
us
I
were
miss
very
Marlon.
good at. I think I gave you your first consulting job when I sent you down to Alabama.
Yep. Do you know that they reached out to me here like several months ago?
No, is that right?
Yeah.
Obviously, they're
Bullshit.
still in business.
Bull Shirts had it was a cousin or a friend of those guys that were in Florida that just needed a couple of tips or advice or what. It was just, I hadn't seen nor heard from them since those days.
Yeah,
And
which
they
was
must still
back in
be
the
kicking.
early 1990s, actually.
Yeah. And it wasn't from them directly, it was from a cousin or a nephew or something that said, hey, they said I should call you about these questions. So it was kind of interesting.
Huh. That's funny, because the only thing I remember about the town that I sent you to is they had a statue of a boll weevil. I guess that's where they developed some kind of machinery or whatever. I don't know. I mean, all I know is it was good to send you to Alabama, although I've been there quite a number of times since. But I was on the road so much that it was nice to have somebody else who could go out
I know.
Take care of
And
some of
I
that.
had somehow.
Dothan,
my
Alabama.
Office gal wrote.
Flew into
somebody
Atlanta
else's
and
phone
then got
number.
on a
So I ran that
600
number to pay your
fly
invoice.
into Dothan,
then the
Alabama. I've never been so scared on an airplane. I think returning from there to Atlanta, we went through a storm and I'm just feeling that plane go up and down. That weirded me out. That was a tough
Yes.
flight.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I get to fly quite a bit. I was on a flight coming into Denver. I was in first class next to a guy who did a huge amount of flying. Matter of fact, he pulled out his tickets for the week and he was like on 6 more flights. You know, it was one after. And as we're coming into Denver, all of a sudden the plane is just pulling up hard. And I watched the guy grab the seat and turns to me and said, I fly a lot. I don't know what that was, but I've never had that happen before. And it's like, really? You needed to tell me that so that I could break into a sweat as well. But I mean, you know, if you fly enough, you get used to certain bumpy flights. But of course, when you're quite new at it, any bump kind of sends you off in the wrong direction. It's like, what the hell is going on?
Yes, it does.
But you're doing quite a bit of running around now. You're still doing a fair amount of consulting work as well.
Less than pre-pandemic. I've kind of reconfigured our business model, like you have to as things change. I'm in our business a lot more, which I'm glad that these things have happened. It's re-injected me into the day-to-day, and in so many ways, I kind of was losing. You want your culture and you want your product going out the door to reflect who you are. And I think we were reaching a point where maybe it really wasn't, particularly the culture. And I feel like I've been able to kind of rebuild that again. We've tried to do only repeat business, for lack of better terms.
I mean, what kind of business?
Repeat, on
Repeat,
the consulting
okay.
side, just because if we know each other, we can work together pretty well, and it's kind of an easy fit. And I don't know about how your business goes, but I can't stand the one and dones. I just don't care for a 3-day one-time deal. It just is hard for me to, by the time you get done with introductions and trying to make them like you, it's like the week's over, and I just, it's, and I don't, and I'm sure you've gone through this too, and Richard as well. There's only one of you. So it's really difficult to spread you can only grow that part of the business so big, and maybe lose sight of some of the other parts of the business, as well as during the pandemic. Apparently I like my wife, so it's been nice to be home a little bit more. So I would say, yeah, we're back at it on the consulting side, but in a much more selective approach. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but we're holding it together right now because the business in the decorating part of the business has been super strong, and that's why I got into the business anyway. And I'm enjoying being involved in that again. And desperate times, I can't find people to take my place. So that's the harder part too. So we're just doing a lot more there, as opposed, percentage wise, than we were doing pre-pandemic.
Well, I mean, you do have an actual business besides doing consulting. For me and even for Richard, that is what we do. So, the one and done, welcome to my world. I'd say 85 to 90% of the companies that I work with are often one and done. And so I've kind of expanded my situation. It used to be 3 days. It's now 3 to 5 days, because I'm finding that in that 3-day cycle, it's tough. Most of the companies you go to see have no clue where their weak spots really are. They have an image of what they think it is, but
Sure.
Is that really where it is? And the answer is, well, sometimes yes, but most of the time, no. It's usually somewhere else, and it just falls onto production. Versus could be in the art department. It's probably in the screen department more often than not.
Often, almost always, right?
I mean, to me, I probably spend 75% of my time straightening out the screen room. And what really annoys
Yep.
the production department, it's always funny, and you guys have certainly been you're in the shop, and let's say it's a 3-day thing, and you're coming to the end of day 2, and the people in production are saying, well, when are you going to get to us? And it's like, you know what? You don't count, because if I can get the other parts right, yours is just moving the squeegee. It's not that big a deal. Yes, you do have angles, you do have pressure, you do have things that you have to deal with. But if everybody else gets their part right, your part is really the easiest part of the whole package. They don't see it that way because they've been so accustomed to having to fix all the problems at the end.
Yep. It's funny that the problems on press start to take care of themselves if you can get the screens right. And and you guys probably both would agree, the difficult part is sometimes the people writing the check think it's production. The presses aren't moving fast enough. Setups are taking too long. The same old, I need you to work with our press department. And the first thing you find is that the screens are weak for a number of reasons, whatever it is, that they're making bad screens. So then there's almost a bit of a debate, or at least you have to have that conversation. Wait, I need you to work with the press people. And it's, yeah, but you need to fix the screens, or the press people are never going to get it right.
It's the amazing thing is, having done this for really a long time now, it's the same song and dance 99.99% of the time. It's rare to go into a shop, even if they have good screens, that doesn't mean that they really stay on top of them.
Right.
So yes, we own Newman roller frames. Great. How come your tension is at 17? It's called maintenance. And that's the biggest issue, is getting them to understand that at 17 or 20 Newtons, no, it doesn't really do the job for you. Where do you have to be above that?
Yes.
and we're above is a kind of an elusive thing depending on the mesh count, but of course, we each have our own thoughts about where they should be.
But consistent. And if you're
Right.
running, if you're running retentionable frames at 15 newtons, you're causing more problems for yourself than running static frames.
Well, I agree. And, I mean, the moment I walk in, I see static frames. I mean, I know, number one, I'm going to be in for a challenge in terms of getting the person who controls the purse strings to accept the fact that what you have is just not going to make it for you. Not if you want to improve your quality and productivity.
Yep, they're
And,
all tied together.
and it's like, really, you came here to sell me screens? Time out. I don't sell screens.
Yes.
So, to that end, no. But I mean, those are the conversations that I'm sure all three of us have had to have going
Sure.
into a shop is, look, I can fix what you have and I can make it better, but it's never going to be where you really want it to be because you just don't have the tools for it. And the
Yeah.
tools being your screen. And
Uh,
look, you want to use static frames, that's great. Give me a static frame at 35 newtons, I can make it work.
Sure.
I mean, really, that's the whole
wasn't
deal.
wasn't the trick to test the screen to use the same coin on every screen? Yeah.
But and there's no doubt that we all run into that. I think when you did have graphic elements, and I remember going in there quite a bit, your screens were always beautifully laid out. They were always tensioned. Your whole screen area was really immaculate, which, I go into screen rooms and it's like, really, this is your screen room, huh?
Converted bathroom.
Sure, it's not your ink room. You get more ink in here than you do screens. But, I mean, that's part of the challenge. And that's part of what we did. And what I guess Richard and I and you still do, you go into a place. I now have my little questionnaire that I have them fill out so that I at least have an idea of what I can expect. I think that's one of those things that have just developed over the years from not wanting to come into a surprise.
Sure.
And every once in a while, you go into a place that actually is pretty well organized. The biggest issue is whoever the owner is the front office person, and whoever's running the back for them is dealing with old technology, basically, or old thought patterns on how things were done back at the old shop that they came from.
Sure.
And it's like, man, I don't want to hear about an old shop. Thanks very much. If you liked it that much, go back there. Yeah, the joys. Anyway, I think I'm going to actually be doing some work with M&R now. I think I'm going to be using the Joe Clark Training Center to do some workshops up there. So we'll see how that comes together.
Yeah, they're trying to open up and be more part of the overall community is sort of their approach. Oh, I mean, they started pre-pandemic and then everything sort of.
Well, I was online with them for pre-pandemic and bang, I went up there in
Sport
February
Academy.
and then March, everything closed down. But
They're trying to get back after it.
I think they have to.
Yeah, you and I talked about, Dana and I just did a seminar workshop thing for GSG. They're all starting to go back to having people in their
Yeah.
classrooms and things. So hopefully that'll be a good thing for us.
Yeah, yeah. I think M&R had to do something. I mean, the pandemic has definitely put a bit of a kink in their side, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. It's curious, you talk, and they know it. They know they need to be more community. I mean, to call out the elephant in the room here, Rock is doing a good job of embracing particularly younger people and
They're doing
making,
not a good job. They're doing a great job right now.
making it fun. And that's what Rich did and M&R did in 35 years ago. They were the
Yep.
disruptor. And now and then they built a culture that was us against the world, which is probably what they needed to build at that point. And with the new management, not all that new anymore, with Rich departing and a new set of management, and and even GSG is the same way. You have this old school mentality of it's us against the world. We own Texas. Nobody's going to come in here and mess with Texas. They're all kind of going, wait a minute, that methodology may have worked and built us to this point, but look what Rock is doing. Look what Ryanette is doing. They've been inclusive, and they've been, there's not that they're all good answers, but you post a question on Facebook and 15 people got the answer for you. And that piece of the community is what's driving a lot of that. So, and M&R, I know is carefully trying to embrace that. They don't want to put bad information out. But the non-disruptors have got to figure out how to be community-based, like looking at what Rock's doing, looking at what Ryanette has done in the past. How do we become the resource and the cool kids again? And I'm one of them. There's plenty of people that bleed blue and will never buy anything but that doesn't mean that I don't really like what those guys are doing, because I think what they've done is even the guys down at Made Lab with this thing's pretty cool. Putting, equipment together, the state of the art, and bringing people in to see how it all works together, having the manufacturers do the teaching of the seminars. That they've got the facility, they've just got to figure out how to make it cool again.
Yeah, I do agree. I think Rock has done a great job of developing the younger crowd. They are getting a huge amount of first-time automatic buyers,
For sure.
and it isn't price point, because their price point isn't any better. If anything, at times it's not even as good as some of the M&R stuff. So
It's culture and emotion.
it is,
And
they have
lead
definitely.
time for Cobra. There's that.
You were in Long Beach in January. I mean, I went to the thing that Rock put on,
Mhm.
and it was pretty cool. I mean,
Yeah, it's fun.
no one else has been doing any of that even prior to the pandemic.
Yeah, that had all kind of stopped, and it took a lot of money and balls to do what they did. They spent a lot on that show. Now, they said they wrote a lot of business, but how does that really compare with? Who knows what?
Yeah, but you know what? I think they also looked at it as an investment.
Mhm.
And so, do you have to get a full return on your investment all the time? I think they're looking at it more of a long-term situation. They were able to use that to promote themselves. They definitely, being the only show in town for that show, so to speak,
Sure.
they got everybody to come to it. And I think, look, I'm very friendly with Danny Sweeman. I've known Danny for a long time.
Sure.
I think that M&R made a mistake not being there, no matter what. But of course, I think when Rich was there, he could make the decisions. Now I think it's more of a members of the board type of situation, I'm guessing, but that would be my
Yeah.
guess.
And they are the 800-pound gorilla. So when COVID numbers started going up and more places were locking things down, and probably the political safe thing to do was to pull out.
And I
think
agree
there's
with
other
that.
factors when you look at a Cobra's 10 months out, or it was at that time, and you've got customers. Let's say you got you got 10-month list of lead times. What kind of message you send to those people when you go to a trade show and sell $2 million more worth of stuff that you can't deliver for another 10 or 11 or 12 months too? I think there was a lot more factors than the message, let's just say, on, the 800-pound gorilla took Long Beach off, and you know, the new kids in town stepped right in and replaced them. So it'll be curious how next year looks. It'll be fun to find out how that all kind of plays out.
Yeah, it's difficult when you go to a show and you can't sell anything because you're so backlogged. At the same time, it's not the worst thing either to be backlogged. I mean, that means that there's a
Right.
demand. And I think when they came to Atlantic City, they made a good move by having that little thing across the street at the Tun Tavern.
Yep.
And having a new machine on the floor. Regardless of how far out it is, they need to show that they're still contenders. And I think they did, and that was a show where Rock didn't show much. I mean, they were in the Vastex booth with one press versus what they did in Long Beach.
Sure.
It certainly, I think that was a good thing for M&R, not as good for Rock. But that all being said, I still think M&R has to step it up somewhat and get their face out there a little bit in a more positive manner. I'm not sure how they do that. That's up to them to figure it out. But
Sure.
certainly, putting in workshops and stuff and kind of pushing that whole thing, which is what Rock is doing with that whole thing, that whole Made deal down in Texas. I think M&R definitely needs to do that. MHM, on the other hand, has slid, well into third place, shall we say.
Mhm.
I don't hear much from, I mean, I'm in touch with Tom every once in a while, but they're moving along, they're selling well, they're happy with where they are. They're on a different level again. But I do think that that whole thing with the Made lab is something that M&R definitely has to take into consideration and make it a point of putting it out there on a regular basis to, number one, get the new people, and number two, to be able to step up the level of expertise on those who already have machinery.
Yeah, for sure. And I think they are trying. They're bringing some more team members on with different skill sets.
Yeah,
They're writing software for these Polarises. Is that how you say plural? Polarises.
yeah,
On front end and back end management, which is the workflow of that seems to me the key to make that actually work at high level, high production DTG. Managing that front and back end has got to be a piece that they can provide to the customer, and they have some of that they continue to massage and work on, and they brought some fresh minds in to build that stuff. So that's kind of exciting.
yeah. I mean, I think that's an interesting machine, certainly. I'm not sure what how many they're going to be able to sell in the US. I see that as a machine that's going to go overseas more often than not. Having been in a lot of
My instincts told me the same thing. Peter Walsh says they're a mile long and they can't build them fast enough, because it still seems like there's some inherent workflow issues to work through. Because the vision, Michelle Moxley, explained it to me, it makes sense. And they have some modules in Roselle of like a smart factory kind of approach, where all the orders come in via online. They're pulled robotically and stacked, barcodes placed. The load is still something that I don't think, and most of us agree, you're not going to automate the load, because you got t-shirts and sweatshirts and tank tops and spaghetti straps, so you manually load, a barcode is read, and then it programs the pre-treat, the white down, even the kisses with the transfer equipment, the flashes. It programs all of those things based on the fabric, tri-blend, hoodie, whatever. And then at 300 to 400 pieces an hour, running through the white digital squeegee, then the CMYK digital squeegee with multiple presses and flashes and stuff in between, and then automatically pulled, because robotically they can pull remove the product, go through the dryer, automatically be folded, bagged, barcoded, shipping label, yada, yada. So with that piece of equipment costing $825,000, it doesn't include the dryer, the robotics it's going to take to do all those other things. That I mean, you'd have to be and then for redundancy, you'd have to look at like a $5 million investment, wouldn't you?
Well, if you're doing any kind of length, to me, at 830,000, that's for the machine. By the time you get the dryer, by the time you get the support equipment, assuming you don't have anything, you're into $1 million unit, so to speak. And like when I was in Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, I'd go into shops and they had the CN top machines. They'd have 3 and 4 machines. So it's not the type of thing where you're going to buy one of these if you're doing this, because if that one goes down, now you're stuck.
Yeah.
So, I think anybody who's looking at it definitely needs to look at it as, okay, I'm going to buy one, but not too long after, I need to get my second one so that if I have commitments, I don't fall short on them. And I think, even when we go back down to standard automatic equipment, I'm sure all of us have had the situation where someone says, okay, I want to get into contract printing and I'm going to buy an automatic. And it's like, great, you're not going to get any contract work, because why would they put contract work into your shop if you have one machine and it goes down? Now they're screwed. So, if you really want to get into contract work, you better have multiple machines. Trying to explain it to someone who's looking at, that dollar amount that it's going to cost just to get that one machine up and doing what it's supposed to. And now you're telling them they have to come close to doubling that. And the answer is, yeah, that's exactly the
Yeah.
deal, like it or not.
Yeah.
With that Polaris, it's going to be very interesting. I don't doubt they'll sell a decent amount. I still think they're going to probably sell more overseas than they do in the US.
Could be. It'll be. I know they've thrown a ton of money at it, and they've got. I don't even know how many. I think there's 6 or 8 in the field, and they've got orders for another 12 or something from.
Yeah.
At this point, they're U.S. accounts, but I'm sure once it gets moving.
Well, initially they're going to sell into the US because they need the support. They've got their support equipment and
Sure.
support personnel here. Tough to sell a machine overseas and not have someone there who knows how to make the adjustments that are going to be necessary. And they will need adjustments without a doubt, especially as you go to different climates. Chicago being one way, somebody down in Arizona buys a machine, it's a whole different deal because of the relative humidity. It'll be interesting to see how that machine develops over the next year and a half, 2 years. And who buys them and what they're doing with them.
Yeah, it's the first time I saw it actually operate at that type of speed was as an old school screen printer, watching a different image come off on every shirt at 350 an hour was kind of jaw dropping. Now there's still a lot to work out, I think. It's an online model and you have, men's t-shirts and women's t-shirts and you have 6 colors, that could be managed in a pretty narrow scope. But if you're going to offer, the Amazon model where you can do hoodies and spaghetti straps and youth and adult, and, I can see all the red and tri-blends and polys and cottons. I can see just a multitude of how that can't be completely automated. Just the size alone, different size pallets. Do we need so many youth pallets in the oval so that I can, if it's put in order, I suppose the youth pallet would swing in front when you have a youth shirt. There's just a lot of building, I think, for a completely customized model.
Well, Yeah, I agree. I think, you know, once they get them in the field, once they get enough people working on them, and once they get some of those people who are more computer savvy, they'll figure out some things that will work better. You know, it's still going to be a trial and error situation, I think. Trying to get all the shirts lined up appropriately is certainly part of it.
Yeah, all you gotta do is get one off. and-
Right,
and
you
the
throw
stack
one
will
off
ruin
and the
it.
whole deal is gone because everything after that is wrong.
Yeah.
And, you know, is that a consideration? Without a doubt. Listen, you know, as soon as you stick a human being in there, the chances of something going wrong increase dramatically. If it was all machines and nothing but, that's great. But for what we do, it's not all machinery. So, you know,
That's
someone is
correct.
definitely going to flip a shirt or miss a shirt or whatever. And the rest of that order is going to, if they don't catch it, the rest of that order is all going to be wrong. And the last thing you want to do is have somebody tell you that they're going to bring an ear to your place because
It
they
all
saw
circles back.
some of their shirts at the flea market.
That is true. We gotta be careful.
Lon, thanks so much for being on. Always a pleasure to chat with you anyway. We don't get to chat too much at shows anymore, but you know, it was kind of nice catching up with you in Denver since the show was a little bit on the comfortably slow side, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, I enjoyed that too.
But thanks so much for coming on. It was really fun having you on and kind of hitting back on some of the old days and on some of the things going on right now.
Yeah,
But,
absolutely.
You know, certainly, anytime you want to come back on, just let me know. I'd be happy to stick you on here and see if I can get some of the other old crew on again besides Richard.
Always
any
enjoy
event,
it, Charlie.
Gentlemen, thanks all for coming on. Doing this again in 2 weeks. Not sure who the guest will be, but if anybody has any recommendations or wants to go in a particular direction, just let me know and be happy to see what I can do about it. And I'll speak to you, Lon, another month or so when it's a bit warmer and more predictable. I may just see if I can pop out and say hi out at your facility.
That sounds good. I'll expect at least $1,000 bottle of wine.
And you know, not a problem. I will bring that. I'll bring that bottle of Ripple. It's an old bottle. It must be worth at least $1,000 by now.
I assure you it's $1,000 bottle.
Gentlemen, all and others, thanks so much for being on. Appreciate it. Have a good
Thanks,
one now.
Charlie. See you guys.
Bye, guys.